Well, knowing that right at the moment we're at a Philosophy for Children conference, I'd like to start by talking about how I'm in the United States and what my connection is to being here today. I was a student of the late 1960s, early 1970s, and there were a lot of changes in society at that time, a lot of structures changing, and certainly what was considered the norm of behaviour was changing. There was the hippie-type revolution. The college campuses at universities were getting very politically involved. So it was a lot of time of change, and I was part of all of this. When it came time to decide what I wanted to do as a career, I wanted to teach, and it wasn't too long in pursuing that I realised that the whole education system was one of the structures that needed some change. I had started a doctorate on introducing yoga and meditation in the classrooms. I had long been interested and taken courses of study in Eastern thought, as well as teacher training in yoga and meditation. In Australia at the time at the university I was at, the psychology department required empirical research that led me into a little bit of a corner. How was I going to measure the effects of all of these things? So after 18 months of pursuing that course, somebody handed me, education professor handed me Matthew Lipman's book, first edition of Philosophy in the Classroom, and I read that straight away, and it was the second book that changed my life. The first one that changed my life was the first yoga book I read. Both books were about creating meaning in one's life, and how do we go about this. The yoga books were about how we do it personally, but the Philosophy in the Classroom was how we do this through schooling. So that brought me to the United States. I wrote to Lipman and wanted to read everything that he had written, and I came to want to study in the United States. I took a year's leave of absence from my doctorate and pursued a master's degree at University of Massachusetts, because there was another professor, Gareth B, who was also writing about the value of philosophy to children's thinking and their abilities to think independently. So I did a master's degree there, where philosophy for children, according to Matthew Lipman, was just one of the things that was studied. So that brought me to the United States. What happened? I did the master's degree, that's right, went back to Australia, and then I was supposed to come to this workshop here, actually in Mendham at that point, but I got ill, went back to Australia. Then Lipman and Anne Sharp, his partner, came to Australia and invited me to come back. So back I came and have been here ever since. I was working at the Institute of the Advancement of Philosophy for Children for a good number of years with Matthew Lipman and Anne Sharp, doing teacher training, writing curriculum, doing research, travelling around the United States, doing teacher training, and I was there for 8 years, I believe, 8 years doing that, and then moved on to take that work into other fields. My hand gestures then would can you edit this?
You can edit it, that's not to worry.
See, I thought this was about me and philosophy for children, not about me. the big me.
You're the container. I mean, that, you know, for your philosophy for children experiences.
See, I'm a bit lost because I thought this was specifically about my reminiscences of philosophy for children.
Yeah.
So now I'm a bit thrown.
I see.
Because
Well,
I'm talking about me, which is strange. I want to talk about philosophy for children.
Yeah, well, that's, we'll do both.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, the most...
I'm not looking at the camera much.
Doesn't
either.
matter. The most surprising thing you said to me was that your initial interest was sort of philosophy for children and yoga. First of all, could you tell me what book it was in yoga that was exciting? Do you remember?
No, I don't know. If I saw the author's name, I would remember it, but I couldn't even pronounce it. You Siddhan Mahani or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
Did the interest in yoga continue, or was it
Yes.
sort of replaced by philosophy for children?
No, it continued, and it's what I went through philosophy for children, and then came back to that.
I see.
Yeah.
How did those seem to be working together for you?
Well, are we on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so.
The yoga and the yoga and meditation was a way of, it taught me how to live life, the yoga taught me about the body in a very meaningful way. It's an enormous system of information. It taught me how my body fits in with the rest of the world. It taught me how if I try and keep my body clean and pure, then I'm going to have I can trust my own thoughts better, because they're going to be affected by the state of my body. So if I can help my body, I can help my mind. And if I can help clarify my mind and clean it, then I'm going to get closer to the truth. And it was always truth that was my goal. What is the truth? So it was as if I could become as clear as possible, then I could reflect whatever truth there might be, almost like a mirror for the truth. So that was the connection to, it was truth that was the center point to the yoga and meditation, and was also the connection to philosophy. Because philosophy is obviously concerned a lot with truth, although my discussions with Matthew Lipman he was more concerned with meaning. I was always more concerned with truth, but as the years went by, I came to value meaning as much as truth, if not more than truth.
These two parts of your life must have been quite separate. I mean, I'm just guessing that because I don't remember any mention of the importance of keeping your body healthy.
No, nothing in philosophy for children.
No, it did not. It was a notion that never came up.
No.
In
No.
Lipman's thinking, in Anne Sharp's thinking.
Neither was the idea of really even a healthy mind ever really a topic. It was more independent thinking, critical thinking, which to me connected to having a healthy mind, because that was going to get you closer to the truth.
I see.
But you're right about that.
And so you had a whole area of practice to which you were committed that they had really no access to. this
As far as I
practice
know,
of
that
physical
in terms of
culture.
practice, yes, and I don't believe either Anne or Matt had a large background in Eastern thinking.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So, what was it like when you first met these people?
Uh-huh. Well, the first meeting was a workshop, philosophy for children designed workshop at the university that I was a graduate student at, and I remember thinking, oh my God, at last I'm free to speak. At last I can say what I think in an educational classroom setting. Anne Sharp was very good at pulling from people what she could read when somebody had something to say. And she was very good at inviting people to come forward. So that was a very energising moment. It was such an honour to meet Lipman. I had read everything he'd done at that point. By the time they came to Australia, I met him. I was very nervous about, immediately I was thrown into running a classroom discussion. But, you know, the emphasis on listening to other people made me comfortable, because that was something that I was always just had a natural tendency to do. So there was the excitement and there was honour and the privilege of meeting them. But you asked earlier about how did I put these two fields together. Later, years after I wasn't working solely in philosophy for children anymore, I was at another institution. I was doing parent workshops on emotional intelligence for parents using philosophical discussion so that they could work with their children. This was at an early childhood centre. And I remember one of the parents asked a question. I turned to the board and thought, oh my God, I can't answer this. What am I going to do? And all of a sudden, I saw the connection between all the work that I had done on emotions coming through the meditation and yoga and the philosophy for children. And that was really a brilliant moment. I wrote a few papers on that subject.
So is it your sense that, if you look at your life, that you've made steady progress on this matter of finding the truth or getting closer to the truth?
Oh boy. I would suppose that the answer is probably yes, although I have just recently retired, and the structures, you know, the last few years were extremely demanding professionally, and there wasn't much free space in my life for reflection. It was really every day just get up, grit your teeth and go. And so that had been increasing, I would say, for the last 5 to 10 years, 5 years specifically. So you've caught me right at a moment, literally a moment of a lot of those structures are gone, and so I have a lot of mental space now, and a lot of the old questions are coming back to the surface, but I feel calmer about approaching them. But I think I have, yes, a deeper appreciation of the range of mental and attitudinal and emotional states that humans can go into, and that it takes takes a while to understand other people and who you're dealing with. And that has been brought about a lot through years of, philosophical dialogue with other people, because you don't get those depths and range of views in everyday conversation. So I think that my understanding of people, which is part of the truth that you want to get to, has definitely increased.
It's extraordinary how quickly you became important to the Philosophy for Children movement. You moved, as I'm understanding the story, quite quickly from having heard the message to being a collaborator and partner in a very small enterprise at that point. Do you have a sense of what it was about you that made Matt and Anne so interested in taking you on?
I think it was just complete dedication. I threw everything into the process. In fact, when I arrived here today, because I haven't been here for at least, I'd say 20 years, it's more than 22, 23, 24, 25, maybe close to 30 years since I've been here. And now when I look back at how I got here, even the experience of getting to this retreat house, I'm amazed at the person I was, to tell you the truth. I look today at the people who are here, the younger people, and their passion and their involvement, and I was just reminiscing on the type of person I must have been. I was enthralled. I just lived and breathed Philosophy for Children. I left Australia not knowing how long I was going for, whether I was going for a few weeks, the rest of my life, a year or two. I had so much luggage, they wouldn't let me on the plane in Bangkok. I was on the way. I did a workshop with Lipman in Australia, but I'd already done the year in Boston, University of Massachusetts, the master's degree on, teaching kids how to think, and came out of that realising, or believing anyway, that Lipman's program was the superior program. Returned to Australia, Lipman came to Australia, and Sharp. They read my master's thesis, and on the basis of my master's thesis invited me to come back and said, if you come back, because I had decided to give up my doctorate. I didn't want to be pushing my brain anymore. And they said, if you come back and let us train you, and you complete your doctorate, then you'll return to Australia and be the associate director alongside Lawrence Splitter. So that was my role. I was to come here for a year, be trained, and then return to Australia to be the associate director of the fledgling institute in Australia. So I did a 3-week workshop in Wollongong. They said, you got to come now, we're going to Denmark. You've got to come to Denmark and do another. So that was another 3 weeks. So I packed up. I just packed up everything in a period of a very short period of time. Packed up my house, everything. Had too much luggage. Got to Bangkok. They wouldn't let me on the plane unless I paid an exorbitant amount for the luggage. By the time I got to Denmark, I had to ship some of that off separately. Had the 3-week workshop in Denmark, then came from Denmark to here for another 3-week workshop here. When I arrived in Mendham, actually I called the bus from Port Authority. I'd flown from Denmark to London. I had 2 visas. Well, I only had 1 visa, but it hadn't come through yet. So I went to the embassy and said, "Oh, I want a tourist visa." I didn't tell them I had an application in for another one. So that caused some funny stories later. But nevertheless, got on a plane, came to Port Authority. When I got to Port Authority, I sat on the stairs with all this luggage around me. Eventually, I couldn't leave it. I just had to sit. Eventually, a man came, a porter, and said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, I must have sat there for a couple of hours. I said, "I've got to get to Morristown." So when I think of this, as I say, I was so naive of how the world worked in so many ways, which was good, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Got on a bus, arrived at midnight at Morristown. The bus driver said, "I can't let you," I was asleep on the bus, he said, "I can't let you stay here." I said, "Well, I've got nowhere to go, I'll be okay, I'll just sit here and wait till the morning and then I'll call the convent." He called the convent at midnight. The nuns came and got me at midnight. And I was a week early for the workshop, so I stayed in the convent over here for a week. So Matt was impressed with the master's thesis and my clear passion for philosophy of children that came through in the master's thesis. Plus I was willing to just get up and go. And I got up and went. I had research background, I had statistical background, which neither Anne nor Matt had. So I got involved in putting all the empirical studies together and working on the development of the reasoning test. Went down to ETS with Matt a few times. So I had some other skills because of my background in a science degree that helped them. So, and I was just always kept going. I did philosophy for children 7 days a week.
Long days?
Probably. I don't recall. I just know that that's all I did.
Anne's story, before she met Matt actually, when I sort of pieced it out, she was working what amounted to 2 jobs, one of which was paid, with 3 hours of sleep between them.
Yeah.
So she would finish one thing she was doing at 2 a.m. and begin and get in the car to go to the other job at 5 a.m. And I'm imagining that if that continued into her working with Matt, she must have done as much as 5 people. Yeah,
Matt was at his desk every morning, 7 days a week, no later than 8:30 in the morning. So the institute ran basically 7 days a week. I was there 7 days a week for a good number of years. Yeah. Matt kept it all going. Yeah.
So what was a typical day or a typical week like at the Institute in those early days? You say that Matt came in early. What kinds of things happened in the course of a day?
Well, I need to start thinking about the physical layout of the Institute. When I arrived, Matt and Anne and Phil, Anne's husband, were in a trailer. But it was only a very short period of time that then they moved into what became what was called Alderdice House, I think, which was a small house. So you'd walk in every morning. Matt was always there. Sometimes Anne would be there. So their desks were on one side. The kitchen was on the other. Matt had a cat that lived at the house that he would have on his lap most days. And Matt, you would always hear Matt's typewriter going. Then on the next floor there were some more administrative people, and Phil Gwynn was up on the next floor, and then I had an office up the top. There was always projects happening. A lot of the projects that were happening revolved around teacher training. So Phil Gwynn was the person who was doing most of the teacher training. I was picking up what Phil couldn't accommodate or what he didn't want to accommodate. So we were both travelling at least once a month each to different areas, both in-state and out of state. And that was, you would, if it was an out-of-state workshop, you would go there, stay at the school for a week, and in that first week you would take the teachers through one of the programs like Pixie or Harry or whatever, and you would do the process with the teachers. In the following week, when you would go back, which might be a month later, you would then work with the demonstrate the process with the teacher students, so you'd go around to all the classrooms. And then the third visit you would stay another week and you'd observe the teachers doing the process with the students and give feedback. So when you had a number of schools interested in this, that was a lot of buzz and activity at the Institute. Matt was writing papers constantly. There was another room there where the master's students, every Saturday afternoon, there was master's students training programs.
Excuse me.
Yes, dear. So Saturdays was busy with all the master's students. There were lots of conferences. Anne and Matt would take off, go to conferences. I'd go. It was like a family business that was in a very successful phase. It was very energised. It was just a great experience. And that went on for the years I was there. Even when I moved away from the Institute, the height of activity was still good.
So, what years were you there, please?
85 through 92. 90, yeah.
So the basic novels, about 5 of them had been written?
Well, Anne Sharp wrote novels quite a period after The Dolls Hospital and another 1 or 2. But the what became the core curriculum was all done except the first grade curriculum, Elfie, and I worked with Matt on the Elfie curriculum. But they were all completed by 1985. I think Matt started writing them in 78. Yeah.
And what was it like to work with Matt on the curriculum?
There was one other thing that Matt wrote that was used with. Matt and I worked together on college students at Montclair State, working with college students, and he wrote an adult version of Harry called Harry Prime.
Yes.
So that happened after I was there, the courses we were teaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how was it to work with Matt on the curriculum? I mean, he'd done.
He didn't know I was doing it. He'd written the children's novel, right, which he'd written in all the curriculum. He was the author of the children's novels. It was the manuals that other people participated with him on. And he'd written the children's novel and he'd given it to me to see what I thought about it. And I said, I think it's great, you know. And I had suggested a couple of ideas that I wanted him to put in, and he put those in. So that may have also happened with the creation of the other children's novels. I'm not sure. I didn't have that discussion with Matt. But I was up on the 3rd floor and I was doing this looking up all the empirical things and the teacher training. So I started writing exercises for the manual, and after a while, Matt said, what are you doing? I said, what do you think of these? And that was it. He said, keep going. So I kept going, and that's how it happened. And he said, I can't, in the other manuals, there are letters on who wrote what exercise and who wrote what discussion plans. It'd be ML next to the exercise that he'd written, or AMS and Margaret Sharp. Phil Gwynn wrote a few exercises in the other manuals. So when it came to the, and I worked with him on the introduction of the manual, he said, I can't put my initials on which ones I did. He said, because I can't tell which ones I did and which ones you did. So that was a period of honour. I felt very honoured by that comment, which was nice. So then we practiced them. We took it into schools. He set up some. I was teacher training in York through all the time that I was there. So then I was able to run, Elfie training workshops. It was great.
Yeah. And what was it like interacting with Matt on a daily basis? Well, Matt and Anne both on a daily
Well,
basis.
Anne was always a whirlwind of activity. Even when she was there always had the sense of, she was on the phone, there were papers always seemed to be moving around her. Matt was quiet and still. It was easy to sit down and talk with Matt. Anne was much more, I won't say difficult, but hard to pin down to have a conversation. There was always too much she was organising or doing. So there were the different energies in those two rooms, Matt's room at the back and Anne's at the front. Matt and I had lunch together for many years. He used to go to Roy Rogers every day, for a hamburger. So I would take my own lunch up there and have lunch with him. Most of the interaction, I would say, Anne and Matt, between them downstairs, did most of the organisation of the actual master's program, and there were a lot of international people coming in those years, and Gail Rush, who was the secretary, was always organising visas and things for, there was an enormous international involvement. These workshops here, there were very few United States people there. They were mainly professors from all different parts of the world. So there was a lot of activity. Matt was always fighting the administration of the university to get his way, what he wanted. It wasn't a smooth path. He had to fight, constantly to keep the institute going. To get it going how he wanted it. It wasn't easy.
So
I was talking to someone earlier, and I had mentioned that, and they said that's interesting to hear, because it seems now that in many ways people feel like they're banging their heads against a brick wall to keep Philosophy for Children movement alive. And the person said that it was interesting to hear that, it wasn't easy, that Matt was constantly battling. There was no sort of the good old days. I think good old days were the sense that in that period of time, the late 80s, the early 90s, there was a lot of interest, different political climate too, but there was a lot of interest in critical thinking. It was a wave there. There were a lot of people writing books on critical thinking. And Matt was certainly a vital and very important voice in that whole critical thinking movement. In fact, some people have called him the grandfather or father of critical thinking. So there was a lot happening, in the larger context to invigorate philosophy for children. So it was easier in that regard.
Do you have a sense of how the money was flowing? I mean, there must have been a bunch flowing in from.
Well, Matt and Anne were, college professors with Montclair State, right? Everyone, I think people are familiar with Matt, came from Columbia on the understanding that he could start the institute. There was money coming in from the schools paying for the teacher training. I was on grant money, so each year that had to be renewed. So there was the writing of grants. The work in some of Newark was grant money, not Newark school money. So there was, everything that was involved in keeping that going too. The grant writing was a large process. But there wasn't a real shortage. It was doing well. The books were bringing in money, but then Matt turned over at least his share, and my small share too, back into the institute, the money on the sale of the books.
So, let's see, there was a point in there, and I forget exactly where, when Philosophy for Children was named a meritorious program by the Department of Education, and that made it eligible for some federal funding, gradually shifted the kind of teacher training that was being done, as I recall. I also recall
that was about the doctoral program coming into existence, I think.
Yeah, what I remember is that when I was trained, maybe 70, maybe 80, maybe 79, Matt had a very ambitious idea of what professor training and what teacher training needed to be. It was a multi-stage process, and no one without a PhD need apply. There were all sorts of requirements, and so it took quite a long time before the Institute was happy having a particular person train teachers or engage. And then as things went on, I think pushed by what could be funded, what could be brought in under some of these grants, that training model became simplified.
He was still fairly strict, though, I would think.
It sounds like if you're visiting a site 3 different times with 3 different activities, that's quite a rigorous program. So how did that all feel? I mean, the teacher training, was there energy in that, or did you come away sometimes really disappointed or really drained by those?
No, never. I came away always questioning what could I have done better. But no, I on every occasion, I can honestly say that the teachers appreciated it enormously. I physically got exhausted eventually, but that wasn't because of that was just because I was doing too much. Yeah.
And what was your understanding of the teachers' ability to carry on the program on their own? I mean, how was that third visit looking to you, where you were visiting and watching them use the materials and commenting on that?
I don't think there's one answer to that. I mean, some teachers clearly were going to do very well with it. Others, they were too invested in the belief that the teacher had to know the answers. And so they felt the need to, correct or bring a discussion to an answer or a conclusion. And that's a very hard. I remember Matt always saying that the Achilles heel of philosophy for children was the teacher's sensitivity and ability to the philosophical, and not to jump to closure too soon. Yeah. So there's no one answer. Sometimes I felt confident, other times it was like, oh, well, yeah. And, I often felt that in the hands of the wrong person there could be a lot of damage done. But
now, when I was trained, again, I don't know, roughly 80, 79, 80, there were moments in the training that looked a little bit like a Punch and Judy show between Matt and Anne. I mean, every tutor's shouting at, "Oh, Matt, you've got to take this seriously. They have a real problem with this. They just saw the teachers, and the teachers didn't do very well. What's the deal with this?" But I never knew, since they were having a fair amount of fun the whole time anyhow, I never knew if there were old deep conflicts between them, if this ever got serious, or if it was always this kind of banter, or how that relationship looked. Can you give us any light on that?
I think that Anne played a number of roles, particularly in the discussion. So I think some of her doing that was to model for people what can be done and what should be done, and that there's not an authority and we should stand up and speak. So I think part of her was playing that a little bit, but there were some deep conflicts about logic that I think were very real. They didn't always agree. But I think that's all I can really say about that. Yeah. Yeah. He was very dependent on Anne for her ability to go into different communities, and generate groups and get people involved. Anne was excellent at that.
So, I mean,
He wasn't happy about her writing those books, I know that.
What you mean, the novels that she wrote?
Now maybe that changed in later years, but at the time it happened, he wasn't happy.
Why not?
He didn't think they were philosophical enough. He didn't think they had the substance that was needed to be considered texts for philosophy for children.
I see.
And that was around the time I'd already sort of drifted on to my real job. You know, it got difficult living on soft money. I wanted a bit more security, so I searched out a real job.
So, working as you did with the
Can you want to just...
Yeah, sure thing. Working as you did on all of these, on, I presume at some point all of the novels.
Yes, oh absolutely.
and using them over and over
and
again.
over and over and over
yes.
and over again. When I sat down today and there was Harry, I was like, oh my God, I forgot about all of this. But there was a period of time where I used to think, if I was on a bus, I'd think, we should be reading Harry. What else are we doing sitting on the bus? Why aren't we, this is just a public transport, why aren't we reading this and then talking about it and filling in time?
Yes, I know. Now, I had the luxury, because I wasn't doing that much, of choosing the programs and the chapters I liked best and working with those, and so I got to know Grandfather's Lions from Keogh and Gus very well indeed, and the planets that run around the sun, and I got very familiar. But you know, if I didn't see into a novel, I didn't have to handle it because there was so much other material to work with, and I essentially was starting over, and I wasn't exactly training teachers. But you had your hands in a lot of them. I'm wondering what kind of aftertaste that has left for the curriculum. I mean, having fussed with the curriculum for a long time, do you have favorites? Do you have notions of ways that one might work better than another in certain contexts? Do you have a kind of arc of novels as you think about them? Looking back, what do you think about the curriculum?
I just want to start with just a funny memory. I was teaching at New York University in a continuing education program. So it was critical thinking was the course. So I used Lisa, okay? So when I was being observed, the teacher, the person who was observing me for review or whatever, said, what's the text? And I presented her with Lisa. This is not a text. So, but after the discussion, she changed her mind about whether I should stay or not. She thought I should stay, but it certainly didn't qualify as a New York University text. Anyway, well, I haven't looked at the curriculum. Like today's the first day for many, many years that I've even looked at the curriculum, because when I was working with teaching philosophical thinking for future teachers and how they can incorporate it in their classroom, I used Wartenberg's book and the children's novels that he'd recommended, because the teachers were going into contexts where children's literature was available for them to work with, but they weren't in a position to bring in a whole curriculum. And then I would use some chapters as examples on how to teach specific things and bring in some extra logic. So I haven't worked with a whole curriculum like I did in the days of working at the Institute, where the teacher training, for example, in Newark would be a whole semester, and you would work through maybe two novels, whole curriculum in the semester. So looking back on those novels, I think Harry was just fabulous. I think Harry was a centerpiece because of the logic. You know, I'm thinking now of starting to work with, on a volunteer basis. There's a school in Trenton for high school students who are pregnant, and whether they're going to keep their children or not. There's both types of students there, the babies. So I've spoken to one of the teachers there, they've spoken to the principal, and I've been considering what text I might use for these students. And I haven't met the students yet, so that my decision is going to be informed more by after meeting them. But I just wonder that, like, the first chapter of Lisa, the dating game, always, no matter what population I use that chapter with, people could hook into that straight away. Whether it seems like old-fashioned, whether it seems like silly, but everyone can relate to interactions with opposite sex or even same sex, where there's a romantic interest and how you negotiate those interactions. So it's always been successful. Like yourself, I've got favourite chapters in Pixie with the zoo trip. The one where she knocks on Mother's head and said, "Mum, are you in there?" If I wanted to create a course, I can do it easily by picking up my favourite chapters too. But I think there's something about going through the whole novel. What's the taste that's left in my mouth? I don't know. It's so long ago. But I'd be happy to work with them again. I'm just so happy to see that they're still using the texts here. Just so happy to see it.
No, they have more reference for them than I ever did. My experience with because I'd read Gary Matthews pretty early on and met him, I was seduced by the god of children's literature early on.
Yes.
I was convinced that
was the way to go.
The trick not that was the way to go, but that Arnold Lobel was a genius in a way that Matt wasn't at doing some of the same things that Matt wanted to do.
Yeah.
And because I was seldom in a position where it mattered or even was feasible to recommend a curriculum that would be followed for a full year, I think with teachers, with parents, with everybody, I did more of the pick and choose, mix and match, where Frog and Toad might come in, and then Grandfather's Lions, and then Harry on Anne and Suki going to the art museum. I was very naughty and eclectic about that.
Which I think the advantage of working through a curriculum is I just love Frog and Toad, but you've usually only got one or two ideas in there, as opposed to I'm talking about classical philosophical problems, where in the whole curriculum there was just so many things put in there that you're going to tap into the interests of more people more often. I think that was the advantage, although you do lose a little bit with the lack of fantasy.
Well, you maybe also lose a little bit there is a comfort in "It's Harry again today." There's also "It's Harry again today."
But if the teachers are having it for the first time, I don't know that they're going to have that experience, particularly if the discussions are going well, because then they forget the text and are more involved in the discussion.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't even get... I remember working with... I can't remember his name. Do you remember the Socrates for 6-year-olds BBC film?
Yes.
The young man who was doing the discussion in Newark on friendship.
Yes, it was Brooke.
Brooke and I did a week-long workshop in Newark together. Oh, he was the best. We had the greatest week that week. And, there were times during workshop, I'm not speaking about that workshop now, but there were times when he talked in that Socrates for 6-year-olds, he talked for 5 weeks about friendship. So you're not obliged to go through the whole curriculum anyway. If the discussion, it's the book, I should say, is not in the curriculum. The curriculum is really the dialogue that manifests, as I see it. But the text is just a stimulus for possible ideas that can be talked about. And if that's rich, then the book is no longer boring because, oh my God, it's a source of something for us to talk about.
Yes, yes.
But I think if you go through it like, you have to get through it, then it becomes a problem.
Yes.
Brooke was amazing.
Yeah, I've been reminding people of that more recently, of that particular discussion, for a couple of reasons. One is that he seemed to want, he insisted in a way that I don't remember Matt doing, that we continue the discussion until we get somewhere. And he also insisted that people think about it in terms of their lives and bring it back to their lives. And the students were talking about, well, do we have loyalty in this classroom?
Yeah, that was a brilliant discussion, wasn't it?
That was as good as it gets.
Yeah.
It didn't have the kind of neatness that a 45-minute discussion would have. Remember, his definition of friendship was like there was this map of everything and the kitchen sink too, with so many clauses. It was very difficult for me to imagine how anybody could have understood it.
But it was such a meaningful discussion for the people in the room at that time. They were so invested, and emotionally and intellectually, in that discussion.
So this matter of emotional investment has been a central thing in this workshop in 2018. People are moving towards saying, in addition to rigor and clarity and being able to follow the discussion, it also has to have a kind of emotional power for us. We have to know what it means to us and answer the question, well, what at the end of the day does this change about something I actually care about? Change about my marriage, change about my decision as to what I'm going to do with my work, and so forth. And I'm just wondering, where was that issue as you were training and thinking about teachers?
It wasn't there enough. That was part of my drifting away, I think. I felt eventually disconnected, that it was becoming, and this is nobody else's fault. I'm just, when I say becoming for me, anyway, too intellectual. No, that's not even the right word. Too disembodied.
Nice.
And as a consequence, my health started to suffer. And so I was forced in a very harsh way to go back to the yoga practice in a even more meaningful way than I had originally been, because my mind was here, my body was over here.
So had you been doing yoga practice in some way throughout your time at the Institute?
Yes, but not in the right way. How do I put this? I had a goal of what I wanted to achieve. I'm not talking about my yoga practice, about my working with teachers and keeping it going, and I was using my yoga practice to give me the energy to do that instead of using my yoga practice to keep me more grounded, more connected to the world outside of philosophy for children. Philosophy for children would just become my world. And I think I got lost in it a bit for what's really meaningful to me. Yeah. And I got quite ill physically. I think I had basically a breakdown because I was just worked for years, 7 days a week, and had to go back to square one and say what's real, what's important, and what are you really doing. So, it took a while, but everything came together again. But I got much more heavily involved at that point in guidance and meditation practices.
Now, you said at the beginning that yoga and philosophy were two ways of pursuing truth for you. Do you feel that through the time you were working at the Institute and doing the teacher training, that you were also pursuing the truth, or did that also get derailed?
Yeah, I think that got a little derailed. In terms of my sort of truth, what's true, personal truth, I got more involved in dialogue per se. Keeping a dialogue going, keeping everybody interested in the dialogue. What new ideas can we get out of this?
Yes.
And that sense of personal meaning, probably for the other people in the room too. I wasn't focused on that. It was the dialogue, enriching the dialogue, no matter what it was about.
So it was, I'm just thinking about
I had consequences in my vision as a result of all this too.
I'm thinking, in my own case, it was like I was intensely interested in making the discussions work and seeing them as sort of beautiful organisms. But I think a lot of time I didn't walk out and think, okay, what progress has been made on any question that I care about? It was like, that's finished. Now I'll go on to another discussion, as opposed to thinking that has contributed a piece to something I'm building. That was surprising to me, that just the activity of doing the dialogue kind of took over.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So can you say, you've said a little bit about it in abstract, but how was your separation from the Institute and your move on to other things?
Well, I took a break for a while because I got quite ill. And then I was working part-time, but a lot of it was from home. I did the index for Matt's book, Thinking and Education. So I create little things, I did activities like that, but I was working from home. And then I was doing 3/4 time, but I was more removed because I was aware that I had to really pay attention to my health. So it became less of a passion. I think I got more passionate about myself and my health than I did about the dialogue. So my approach to the dialogue was probably healthier because I was more balanced. So I did that for a couple of years around, that would only be about a year, 3/4 time. And then I moved down, I was living in Montclair and I moved down towards the Princeton area. I was involved with a meditation school and they were located down there, so I wanted to be closer to the community that I was connected to there. And I moved down there, and then I was doing teacher training for a couple of years in Maplewood and around those areas, not far from the institute. I don't know that I did much travelling then, teacher training. I can't remember. And then I did some work at like St. Peter's College for Philosophy for Children. It's a little vague. I know I was still doing teacher training, it was enough to live on. And then then I came back. Ed Foundations Department at Montclair State contacted me to say there was a full-time position there. It was only for a year, contracting. So I took that, and I was commuting. And then I was starting to look for, a full-time teaching position. And then one of the people at Montclair State, Mark Weinstein, remember Mark?
I trained with him.
Okay. His wife was at Wagner College, and she told Mark to tell me that they had a position and to apply, because she knew me through Mark, etc. So I applied, and that's where I ended up. Yeah. And that was 22 years ago.
And during that 22 years, what was your relationship to philosophy for children or community of inquiry or philosophical dialogue?
All my classes were taught in that fashion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Over the years, in some of the classes, I went into a little bit of lecture mode to present material at the beginning. But as soon as I presented the material, it was always discussion-based. I taught in the first year program at Wagner for 8 years, and my course in that program was Ways of Knowing. Okay, so that was intellectually keeping me connected. Then after that, I was doing all graduate teaching, and I always had a course. I converted the philosophy of education class into philosophy in education class. So I was using Mortenberg's book for those last, I don't know how many years, 8 years or so, to do philosophy for children. So I was connected that way. In terms of the people, I stayed in touch with Matt till he passed away. He would call fairly regularly, particularly when he was having difficulty with Parkinson's. And he always wanted to talk, and he did it with quite a bit of enthusiasm about his cognitive experiences of Parkinson's. He was fascinated by what his mind was doing, and he had actually asked me to, if there was anyone I was in touch with that was doing any type of clinical, experimental research on the mental processes of people with certain diseases. He wanted to participate, he wanted to be of service in that way. And I contacted Andrew Newberg at University of Pennsylvania, who I didn't know, but I had read his books, and asked him if, because he was doing a lot of work with MRIs and fMRIs, I think they're called. He was interested in religious experience, and I think his book was called The Neurobiology of Religious Experience. He was interested in what happens in the brain when people have report having had religious experiences. So I thought he might have been interested. He was the only person who I could even think of that might have had some type of interest in this, but he wasn't. Matt was certainly wanting to move in that direction, but he was able to talk very objectively about the thought processes and what was happening in his mind.
Yes, I remember that from the little bit of interview I did with him in the midst of that. He was sort of, it was as if he had he kind of learned how
To move around.
to move around, to say what he wanted to say, or something like what he wanted to say, within the constraints that the disease had made in his mind. And he was kind of fascinated as he talked to be able to do that. I remember that.
I remember him saying he likes to listen to the baseball because it keeps him in one place.
Now, you and I share this impulse in more normal college teaching to simply turn it into philosophy for children wherever possible. I said at the 30th that Matt had saved me as a college teacher because I couldn't have continued in a normal mode, and he gave me another model that I mean, students may or may not have liked it, often they didn't, but it gave me something I could believe in.
And do, and maintain.
But there was always a problem I had when I did that, and I'm wondering how you thought about that. And the problem was that Matt's approach is fundamentally an artifact approach with small bits of text as the prompt. Now, I loved that for college teaching because what it meant was I didn't have to pretend that anybody had read anything, which meant that I got many lies out of my head right from the beginning. I didn't even think that, I thought they went out of existence when they left the classroom and came back into existence in the class, but I never thought that they thought about my class outside of the classroom. And that was the most brilliant thing about what Matt did for me was he gave me kind of permission to get rid of that myth in my teaching and and get rid of the torture of trying to get people to talk about something they should have read but hadn't, or hadn't read in any way that anyone would call reading. But then there was the thing, I needed texts. If I was going to teach, ethics or business ethics or logic, I needed something to stand in for the half a page of Harry or 2 pages of Harry that I would have read in a philosophy class. What kind of thing did you do to get texts for the things you needed?
Well, one jumps into mind straight away. It was it was a human development class. I would give them some of the original writings of. Now these were graduate students. They were coming. Some of them were coming straight from undergraduate. Some were returned, from another career. Some had psychology, some hadn't. So here we were. We had to start at square one. So I would give them. I divided the class into emotional development, cognitive development, moral development, and I'd give a classic, in emotional development, we work with Freud because everything that happened after that was either in agreement or disagreement with Freud, right? So I would give them, and then it was Maslow, Erickson, or whatever. I would give them the original writings of Freud. Just a small section, a few pages. Well, it's impossible, right? So I would say find one word, if it's only one word that you connect with. Remember that with Matt? The kids, if it's just one word. If there's a phrase that you like, if there's anything that rings true, so then that would start the discussion. They'd feel comfortable. And then from the dialogue that would happen in the room, I would build out the theory, you know, the elements of Freud's theory. Right? So we'd go into, you know, stage theory and ego and all of that, based on a few words. So that was when I said there was classes where I would do a lot of the talking, but that was as a result of the discussion that they would bring to it from what they'd read. So that was one way of doing it. Another way was having them read a chapter of a book, say Alice Miller. They'd read a chapter and they had to bring one idea from the chapter to class to talk about. And I could always count on somebody coming along with one or two ideas. So most of them had read the chapter, and that all they had to do was underline in their book something that stood out to them, and then we'd start from there. So I think they felt more comfortable knowing that they didn't have to understand the whole chapter. They probably didn't even have to read the whole chapter, because by the time we'd finished the hour and a half or 2 hours class of discussion, most of the material would come out. If there were ideas in there that hadn't come to the surface, then I would say, what about this? Did anybody read this, or what did you think about that? To try and cover the other points. So that was the way around it. Now, I don't know why, and it sounds like I'm boasting here, but it's only just because of our conversation that it would always come back to me how much students love my classes. And I'd go home thinking, I do nothing, I'm not doing anything. You know what I mean? What's happening? And then I get this feedback from other colleagues, from administrative staff. So something was working. And the written feedback that I would get would be, we learned so much in your class. And I was always amazed, because I felt like I was not teaching anything in the sense of putting ideas or giving them material like in a regular college class that they had to learn and remember. Yet they felt I learned so much. They learned so much. And I had a handle on the material. So it's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
My teaching evaluations were always superior, right? I got quite a number of awards while I was at the college, and all of it was dialogue-based. And I thank Matt for that, because that gave me the confidence to do it, because I couldn't have done the other. I could not have done the other.
No, that was dead. I've always wondered, I mean, I'm told that Dewey, who's the great patron saint behind all this stuff, taught his classes by getting up to the lectern and sticking his nose in the text and never removing it, and just reading things to people.
Hard to imagine, isn't it?
Did Matt and Ann teach college the way you taught college? I mean, when they had to do...
I don't know. When I taught with Matt together, we co-taught for a couple of years using Harry Prime college students. And what we did in that was very similar to what you were talking about before we started, when I asked you about the contemplative session you had and how it worked. We would go through a text. Prior to Harry Prime, we were using classical philosophical texts like Hume or whoever. We would read a paragraph, then we would ask them those same questions. So it's interesting when you said that.
So question, just for the record, the question, find one word.
No, we didn't do that one, but it was, what does it mean, and what does it mean to you, and what have you learnt from the discussion? So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, I remember that doing it. Because
So-
I'd
so-
forgotten about that class that I taught with Matt till you said that.
So somehow Matt stumbled onto Lectio Divina, which is originally a contemplative exercise. I wonder where he got the idea.
I don't know, but the idea of separating what the author is saying and what you think the author is saying is so powerful.
Yeah,
You know, the difference between translation and interpretation.
yeah.
And translation was a very big word in Matt's dialogue,
I see.
you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a story to be told about the effect of all this consorting with Catholics on Matt's development. I mean, he's at a retreat house for endless numbers of years. He's got Anne across the hall, and then he's meeting his most enthusiastic reception in some places from Catholic schools.
Well, I think the logic is very the big connection with the Catholic tradition. I'm not Catholic, I don't know a lot about it, but I think there's the logic is, and the rationality is a large part of the connection there too.
I see.
As much as I understand Catholicism.
Well, I could talk to you endlessly. It's very rare to meet someone who tracked almost year by year one's own development, and that's the case here in so many ways. Although I was not close to Matt and Anne, I was doing intensive philosophy for children work at about the same time that you were.
You were earlier.
Yeah. Well,
I remember Anne's house. Anne's house, she was always having people over to her house. That was another part of the activity. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, you were
I
saying.
missed all that. I missed the socializing, and I missed the kind of global community. I always regretted that. I was working on my own, and I had to maintain a kind of conventional career alongside it to make things work. But I've always, but so much of many of the questions that I ran into, I wasn't tempted to overwork though. That was a terrific difference between us. That there was, there weren't enough jobs coming my way that I was tempted to, work 7 days a week for very long.
I felt like a missionary. I felt like that I was getting a salary. It was just like amazing. I would have done this.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes, we were saving the world. We were the only bright light in an exceedingly dim.
I mean, I had all those books in the
landscape.
back of my car, all those manuals, and I was off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never drank the Kool-Aid on the manual, so I'm sorry. I always found the manuals superfluous to anything I wanted to do. They seemed to me always to be a concession to the way teachers regularly do things, rather than a really bright idea. It's like the novels would carry it, and maybe should carry it. But I'm sure that for people who worked with them and who were fond of them, it was a different experience. But because I wasn't supporting the curriculum day in and day out, but was rather supporting teachers and parents who were doing this occasionally, sometimes regularly, but not within a school program. I never came to, I don't think I ever sent any, I don't think the Institute ever sold one manual because of me. They sold a good many novels, but they didn't sell any manuals because of me. Besides that, they hadn't learned about wire binding, and they were the most unappealing books in the history of the universe, I think.
They were very cumbersome,
Yes,
but
yes.
I think they were very helpful for people without experience in, dialoguing, how to keep a topic alive.
Yes, what to do when you run out of things to talk about.
Yeah, or how to just an idea to get to the next place.
Yes. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
taking the time with me.
Thank you very much.